Hi there, Betsy. Hi, everybody. How you fighting Irish you? I was just on a call with my alma mater, Northwestern, and so I had to jump off. I sent you an email that it was going right till,
Yeah.
yeah, so sorry about the couple minute delay.
No, that's okay. No, class, they're still popping in, so that's no problem at all.
Good. Great to see all of you. It's all those schools that start with N in the within a 2-hour radius of each other.
Yeah. Now, do you still teach? Do you teach at Northwestern too? I know that you did.
Yeah, I'm a professor of practice at Medill. So I don't really teach. I've never really taught. I guest lecture. I mentor a ton of students. I was talking to 2 students yesterday. I've got a couple more today. Mentoring, talking individually. I was on campus last week.
Right.
Big Association for Women in Sports Media. I hope all of you have heard of it. We allow men as well as women. AWSM. Check it out. And we did a big event before our basketball game against Indiana. And of course, I'm not even using the adjective women's because that's the big one now, isn't it? Yeah, Northwestern and Indiana game last Tuesday, women's hoops, which is, of course, on fire. I'm sure we may talk a little about that. You guys have somebody there that's pretty darn good as well. Anyway, so yeah, I go back a lot. I'm on the board of trustees, so I'm all in. I should be wearing purple, but not today.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah, we have KK Bransford from the women's basketball team in this class as well. So we get updates about women's basketball. Then, as I mentioned, we had Muffet come in on Monday and talk to the class. So that
Muffet.
Yeah. She said, hey, she said, tell you hi.
That's great. Thank you. Well, that's back at her, although I guess that means you're probably not just see it. I'll text her and say hi. So
yeah.
Tough act to follow, you guys, but I'll do my best.
And then Pam Ward, I had Pam in a couple of weeks too. So she said to tell you hi as well. So the old home week here,
Exactly.
Getting the band back together. So I think most everybody from the class is with us now. So I want to give a brief introduction to Christine Brennan, because if I read everything, that would take up the hour of the class. So it will be very short, but I made sure that everybody looked you up and Googled you before we got going. But Christine, you know her for USA Today columns, you know her for her CNN and PBS commentary and interviews that she does on there. This has been a very busy winter period for you. Probably, usually it's rather quiet right now, but between the skating scandals and our friend Caitlin Clark, it has been very busy for you to talk, on a national level about all these different things going on. And I'll have you kind of expound a little bit about some of the stories that you've been breaking here in the last few months, just a little bit. But she has a number of books. I think my favorite book of hers is Best Seat in the House. And it really talks about her love of sports and how she grew up in Toledo and how her dad would take her to sporting events and really how that started her love of sports. She was first female sports reporter from the Miami Herald, had all kinds of firsts after that. And now again, as I say, she is an accomplished sports reporter on the national level and breaks stories all the time. So Christine, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. As I mentioned to you, we have just been talking about doing interviews and how you prepare and how you get a great interview. But of course, I don't want you to be limited talking about that. Most of the students that we have are female and they're looking for careers in this business. And so I want you to talk a little bit about that as well and the opportunities that they have now to go into sports in whatever level, wherever they want to go. But Christine, I will turn it over to you. Talk about your background, how you got into this, and really some of the things that the students can take away from them as they advance their careers in sports.
Absolutely. Well, Betsy, thank you. And of course, right back at you with your book, Playing Ball with the Boys. I'm honored to be on the cover of that. And I have it, what is that? Billie Jean's on the cover, Billie Jean King. You, me, is Robin Roberts on the cover? I'm trying to think who else is.
Robin isn't, but Leslie is.
Yes, anyway, it's an honor. I have it. I know exactly where I have it. And it's really cool. I hope it's required reading in the class. Wink, wink. If not, read the professor's book, right? First hint. But no, it's great to be with you, and Betsy and I go back a long way. And of course, all the accolades and beautiful, wonderful words could be said right to you as well, what you've done over your career, and a trailblazer as well. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's great to talk to all of you. And this is your session, so I'll talk for a few minutes. And but if there's questions, I hate to go off on a tangent. If there's something you specifically want to ask someone like me, I'm here for you. Everything's on the record. Not that you need to tweet out the most controversial things I say, but it is fine to do so if you want. But mostly just here for you and to tell you about the greatest adventure of anyone could have in their lives, and that is sports journalism. I love it today more than the day I started. And that was a few years ago. I was launched out of Northwestern with my undergrad and my master's into the career of my dreams, you guys. I've never worked a day in my life. I get to travel the world writing and talking about sports. Now Betsy, I'm sure you get this too, like the age, are you going to retire? And like, retire from this? This is I'm like, you're dancing through the flowers. I mean, like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I've carved out my life exactly as I wanted. So while like today is a pretty crazy day because of my commitments to my alma mater, which had nothing to do with journalism per se today, but there are days I could take the whole day off. I do, I can kind of do what I want. Obviously, when Caitlin Clark's passing Pistol Pete Maravich. By the way, hasn't this been great for Pistol Pete? I mean, he died in 1988. He died 14 years before Caitlin Clark was born. And now all of you've heard of Pistol Pete Maravich, right? So I don't know, all those guys out there, we can talk about it if you want. People are kind of grumbling, oh, it's not the same. Well, you know what? It's math. There's the person who has the most points in the history of major college basketball, D1 basketball, is a woman, and that's just a fact. It's it's the numbers. So anyway, lots of interesting stuff we can discuss and get into and talk about there. But if it's I'm able to carve my life out and do the things I want at this point. I don't cover that many games anymore, you guys. I do more issue-oriented stuff. I do a lot of pontificating from my desk. I got all kinds of fans. Just look on my Twitter feed how much people love me. Joking there. And but also I'm able to speak my mind. I have a column. I've written a column with USA Today since 1997, so quite a while now. And I do a lot of speaking around the country. I've been in Notre Dame several times speaking over the years. Love that. And love dealing with issues and of course I've covered a lot of wonderful athletes and Super Bowls. I think 10 Super Bowls. I never take that for granted ever. I have covered gearing up for the Paris Olympics, and that will be my 21st in a row, winter and summer. And as I sit here and look at you and in your faces, and I know your dreams because they were my dreams, and I know your fears because they were my fears in terms of like, how are you going to get a job? And how does this happen? How does someone go from being a 22-year-old student to being a veteran who's talking about going to her 21st Olympics in a row? LA in '84 was my first with the Miami Herald and Washington Post for years. And now many with USA Today, ABC News, CNN, et cetera. As Betsy said, how does this happen? Because, you guys, when I was in school, I was high school, even watching the Olympics on TV before there were DVRs and VCRs, and you had to get home at 8 and watch from 8 to 11. If you got home at 8:15, those 15 minutes were gone forever. And I would have a tear at the end of the Olympics when they were over because I loved them so much. There's something about the Olympics that called to me: sports, travel, overseas, breaking news, just all about the Olympics. And I would have hoped to go to one as a fan, to pay my own way, go with my family. Someday, if you talked to me at Northwestern in 1980, I would have said, gosh, could I go to one Olympics someday as a fan? And here I sit before you, gearing up for my 21st Olympics in a row, winter and summer, all expenses paid, credential, laminated. I can show you what it looks like in a minute here. Just glorious souvenirs, to this day, all of them. Credential around my neck, interviewing Katie Ledecky as she's dripping wet, interviewing Simone Biles when she's just come off the balance beam. Access that would be worth, what would that be worth on eBay? Would that be worth $250,000? Would someone buy that? You know, who knows? And I get to do this as my quote unquote job. How fortunate am I? And how does that happen? You know, how does it happen? I'm not saying I'm so great or I've done so much, you know, whatever, people can judge or not. But how do you get this? You know, if you want this in your lives, I can picture myself, if there'd been such a thing as Zoom, listening to someone at, you know, at this stage of her career, talking to one of my Northwestern classes, like, how does this happen? How does it happen? It's about the most basic thing I can tell you, and I'm going to sound like your parents right now for just a moment. My apologies, in terms of sounding like I'm going to tell you something you maybe already know. Hard work, dedication to the task, finding something you love and going for it with all your heart and soul, being willing to pull all-nighters, being willing to pull an all-nighter and then like a day later pull another all-nighter if you have to. I'm certainly not recommending it, but I've done that with several of my 7 books over the years, and that's no fun. When I say hard work, that means double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking your work, double checking every spelling. You know, back in the day, we had to, I don't even know where we went to double check names since we didn't have, I guess, went into, you know, some kind of book or encyclopedia, or we called the library, not the city library or the county library, but the library at the Washington Post. And they would check something with clips, newspaper clippings, the little paper, you know, actual paper. Now you guys can check things so quickly. And I'm so fortunate too. Literally, I wrote about Katie Ledecky the other day. I've covered Katie Ledecky since she won the gold in London in 2012. I was watching her swim, as were William and Kate, the prince and princess, because they thought the British woman was going to win, and a little American water bug, 15 years old, upset her. Rebecca Adlington was her name, and Katie Ledecky was on her way. And I've covered Katie since 2012. I have lunch with her mom. They just live about a mile from me or so in Bethesda, Maryland. I'm here in Northwest DC. And I know the family so well. I'm still double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking her number of medals at the Olympics. And not necessarily her name, but you've got to be a perfectionist and you've got to care. And mistakes have to make your skin crawl. Even now, I just like, I would never want to make a mistake. And so how do you prevent that? Hard work and just being willing to double check everything. And, you know, you guys, it's the secret to success is there's absolutely no secret to success. What worked in 1950, worked in 1980, worked in 2010, and will work in 2040. And that is the diligence to do the job right. Your name is on it, whether it's a school paper or whether it's a byline on A1 of the Washington Post. And which I'm lucky enough to have had quite a few of those. Or if you're on CNN, as I was talking about Caitlin Clark moments after she broke the record the other day. You got to get it right, and you got to care, and you got to be passionate. And, you know, if what I'm saying, it sounds a little scary, I don't mean it that way. It's, you know, you start out and you just do what you can do and you'll be fine. But if it does sound a little daunting, like, oh, I don't want that. Well, then it's probably good to hear that too, right? Because obviously I have one career. I didn't choose many other careers. I thought about law school. I never did that. I wanted, you know, once I realized I could do this and get paid to do it and write books and give speeches and do all the TV, this is like a romp in the park, you know, I'm going to do this the rest of my career. But there's a lot of things that aren't suited for individuals and all of us. So, you know, anyway, bottom line is that's really what it takes. There's no secret. And being willing to work hard, being willing to take a job in a small town if necessary and start out, which is great, frankly, because that can be a situation where if you do make a mistake, and we all do at times, as much as we try not to, you're making it in a very small place and it's not on the world stage or the national stage. And that can be a really good way to learn for a couple of years. So if you're in a small place and a lot of your buddies are in New York or Washington or Chicago, it's not so bad in some ways. Anyway, that's kind of an overview. I could talk forever on all that stuff. We can talk more if you'd like about specifics of going, you know, of jobs, internships, what have you. Certainly check the internet. Internships are key. I had 4 during my summers at Northwestern. One was a Northwestern one in Lexington, Kentucky, and the other 3 I got myself, 2 at the Toledo Blade, my hometown paper, and then 1 at the Miami Herald, which led to my full-time job. Internships lead to jobs. So to get internships, and how do you do that? I'd be checking Twitter, X, I'd be checking every website. You've got an advantage we never had. You've got this thing this laptop I'm looking at, you've got it, use it. And really search and look at, go to websites and read about newspapers or TV stations or news organizations or whatever, and see what their internship policy is. And you can check that on websites. We never, ever could have done that. So you've got a great heads up and leg up than my generation, our Betsy's and my generation had, for sure. So let's go interviewing, because I'll touch on that. And then I think maybe we just open it up for questions. So interviewing, I don't know that I have any set policy or strategy or philosophy on interviewing. There are times when you're waiting, like when I was covering the Washington football team, when they actually won games and won Super Bowls. That actually happened. Joe Gibbs, back in the 80s, first woman to cover the team. The Washington Post put me on the beat. My best college friend, who I met first day freshman year, sitting next to me at the Washington Post. You guys might have heard of him. His name's Mike Wilbon. We're like brother and sister to this day. Can you imagine us meeting first day as 18-year-olds and still being dear friends, texting the other day and in touch all the time? And, he said that Washington, that's bigger than covering the White House when I got the Washington Post, Washington football team. I don't want to say the name that was so racist, although I wrote it many times for years. But he said, this is such a big deal for you, and it turned out it was huge, and it was it was really it changed my life because it toughened me up. I got yelled at a lot. People didn't like me. You have to write stories. You're not beholden to the team. You're beholden to your readers and your editors, and that means you sometimes have to write about the cornerback who got beat 3 times in a game and he never spoke to me again. And that's what happened. And I was in my 20s and I dealt with that because there were 44 other guys on the team I could talk to, I guess. But, these things happen. It's a high profile and you want that. I wanted that. But going back to interviewing, so I'm at, I'm in the locker room every day. We can talk about that. Locker room, equal access, absolutely, for male and female reporters in both men's and women's locker rooms. And that was solved in 1985. So it's been, solved for a long time. For women, you're in doing your job in your workplace. For men, you're in, women's Final Four. If Caitlin Clark's there, that locker room is open if they have it now. They may just have interview rooms, but it's equal access for male and female reporters. And I'd be the first to stand outside with a male reporter if he was not allowed in, because I had so many men standing with me, supporting me, for demanding that I get in the locker room to do my job. It's a workplace. It's not sexy or exciting. It's a workplace. But I'm in that locker room and I'm just going locker to locker. And I may have had a note written down or two. I had my notebook. I had a tape recorder. Now you just have, just have the iPhone, to do that, or whatever you use to tape things. And definitely tape every conversation, because that's the only way you're going to get it 100%. Although there are times when you're literally writing as fast as you can that you won't have time to transcribe the tape. And that's the only time I might not tape, or if it doesn't work, or if I thought I turned it on, but I didn't, you can usually have a colleague get you those quotes, could just text you the file, the voice memo file, whatever. But also you could, if you have to, take notes, of course. And then if you have to scramble and just type it up, you do your best, but you'll never get it 100% right unless you tape record it. That's a fact. And I can tell you that because I have 40 years of experience on that. But if it's close to right, it's okay if you're in a jam. And if literally you have to tweet something immediately, and sometimes Twitter, you're actually truncating a quote anyway, right? Use ellipses as best you can if you do cut something out. But these things do happen. Obviously, misquoting people is death, in journalism death, not real death, journalism death. And I don't know that I've ever done it. People have said I have, but then I produced the tape and it's like, oh, okay. So, but there'd be times I just go to a locker and it's got to be in your brain too. Like if you're covering a beat, as I was back then, I'm living it day in, day out. I go out, I go on dates, I go to dinner. I had a full life. I go to parties, but it's pretty much, you're on at some point 7 days a week. And even if you have the day off and someone else is out at the park covering for you, you're still going to get a call from that person asking a question or two, so I'm living it, and I've lived it all summer. I've been at the training camp in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I've been, embedded there. I've been living in a fraternity house with some of the other writers, all men. And, we all, of course, had our own rooms and, bathrooms and all that. And, but bottom line is, so this has been in my DNA since July. So July, August, September, October, November. So if I'm not able to go up to a offensive lineman and ask a question in the middle of November, I'm not a very good journalist, am I? So with that in mind, and I might have a specific story in mind, an issue in mind, I might have 2 or 3, I might be working ahead. I might have, 4, 5, 6 questions to ask someone each on different topics. And then move to the next locker. So that's the opposite of preparation for interviews. I mean, you're prepared, but you're also like, oh, there he is. I'm going to go get him right now. He's just come back from lunch. And by the way, everyone's, of course, totally clothed in this situation. Of course, 100% cameras are in there. It's not just women sports writers or male sports writers who also don't love being in the locker room necessarily in terms of watching people change their clothes or something, or trying not to watch people change their clothes, which is, I keep eye contact at all times, but also cameras, which is, far worse, and, blasting into, images into a home with a 4-year-old watching, something like that. So anyway, that's how it could be spontaneous. Someone's there. Oh, and then, or I'll circle back like, oh, wait. And one more thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you. When you're covering a beat, that's okay. That's okay. It's very fluid. Do any of you cover any teams, or is it anyone covering for any campus publication or broadcast outlet? If you do,
Maddie has a beat. Maddie covers football.
oh, excellent. I've heard of Notre Dame football.
Yes. Yeah, a
Yeah.
few of us do
Yeah.
writing for the Observer. So
Excellent. So you know what I'm talking. And do they have interview rooms, or do they let reporters in the locker room?
and not the locker room that I know of. I don't know about any of you other guys, but there's definitely like post-game press conferences, pre-game weekly press conferences. So there's like lots of opportunity.
When you're on like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, do they bring a couple players in to be interviewed too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got it.
And coach too.
Right, sure. Well, you mentioned you're not sure about the locker room. If male reporters are in the locker room and you're not, that's a violation of the law.
I'm pretty sure there's no locker room access.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had locker room
done
access
that.
to anybody who's here.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
And
no,
so-
I know for a fact we don't let anybody in the locker room after games. 0.
Good, thank you. Good to know. I mean, not good to know. Unfortunately, that's the trend, right? The days of going into the locker room college. And I understand in that sense, the 18 to 22-year-old, it's different. We used to say they're not pros. Obviously, there is now the element, of course, that everyone is a pro if they, in terms of making money, which is fine. But I get it. As long as it's equal, but it's a shame that they choose the very kind of antiseptic, view of interviewing. In other words, bringing people to you versus you going to them. But those days, obviously that's where we are, and that's I'm a realist. So, but in the case then of the interview where or you certainly will know as soon as you see them who they're bringing to you, then it's totally fine. And I do this a lot. I did it with Katie Ledecky the other day. As I said, I've interviewed her. I've covered every one of her gold medal races at the Olympics. How many times have I talked to her? I wrote down a few notes to myself. It was a Zoom interview, and just to make sure I didn't forget something. And that's fine. So you can definitely do that. There's no shame in looking down at your notes to ask a question. But there's also, I think, really important to stay on your toes, kind of like if you're receiving a serve in volleyball or tennis, right? You're kind of, or pickleball, I guess, where you're ready to move. Don't be so tied to your notes that if someone gives you an answer, it happens, and Betsy and I both know it happens in TV a lot, but partially because someone's talking into your ear and you don't even necessarily hear the entire answer, right? But how many times do you see it on politics, on CNN, anywhere where like, and next, and like they don't follow up, right? So the great skill and the important thing for each and every one of you to do, and for me to do in my career, is to listen to the answer. And then before you go to your next question, if you've written them down, which is fine, follow up, because you just heard something really like let's say, you're talking to one of the football players at Notre Dame, and he's talking about, I'm happy with the game, whatever. And yeah, but my cousin is thinking of transferring, from Arizona, and he and I were talking, and I was, thinking about that someday. Maybe if things don't go well, maybe I'll look in, the transfer portal. Now, I'm going to believe all of you would go, whoa, but it would be very easy to kind of be thinking of your next question and not, maybe that's a little too bold of an answer to miss, but I think you know what I'm saying. Listen to that answer, hear them out, be ready to go. You're ready to talk about his father's influence on him or his mother's influence on him. And all of a sudden you hear, oh, my cousin's going to the transfer portal. Maybe let me follow up on that. You just said you're thinking of, oh, I'm really not. I was kind of teasing. It's okay. It's okay to do that and try to do that. Try to be as nimble as possible. It's okay if your heart's racing a little. There are times I'm gearing up for a TV interview, looking right into this or whatever, where I can feel the adrenaline kicking in. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, of course, but it's okay to have those heartbeat going up a little bit, heart rate, and to be a little nervous. Nervous is okay. The old line about the butterflies in your stomach, hopefully they're flying in formation. It's all right, because being on edge being a little nervous makes us who we are and makes us, keeps us on top of our game. It's okay. Now if you're handshaking, and I'm sure that's probably happened to me at some point, maybe when I was younger, like you guys, I'm hoping it wasn't ever, because you don't want that. You don't want a player to see that or a coach to see that. But it's okay. It's okay to, can feel your heart. And that means you're a human being. And, a few deep breaths. If you're nervous or you're walking into your first big interview, say, either side, actually, interviewing someone or doing a job interview, it's okay. Take some deep breaths and know that all of us feel that way. I think one of the big misperceptions I've seen with me is someone like, oh, you're so confident, you got it, whatever. And I said, yeah, I mean, things are, at this stage of my career, things are great. But of course, there's moments, where you're trying to get a question in, or I'm at the Masters and I'm asking the tough question about live golf or why they don't have women members at Augusta. That was back before 2012 when they announced there were 2 women members that they gave to me that I could break the story, even as I was the thorn in their side for more than a decade on that topic. Such good guys and such respect from me to them and them to me that I was able to break that story. But oh yeah, did I love asking the question that I knew every single one of the guys in the press conference? Men I've dated, men, dear friends, people I'm competitive with, I know them all, are looking at me, rolling their eyes. There goes Christine Brennan again. I think it was a pretty good question, because it turned out to be a major, major cultural story, leading ABC News that when Billy Payne was twisting into knots trying to explain it back in 2012, why they had no women members, when the key thing is, again, we don't need to go into obviously all this, but the IBM CEO, the new one back in 2012, was a woman. Actually, she was a college classmate of mine too, although, that had nothing to do with it. And Ginny Rometty, and she was not given a membership to Augusta, and she was the first IBM CEO to not be given membership to Augusta National. That's the very definition of a big story, isn't it? And it wasn't even me, it was all the guys. So big success. All the male reporters started, pummeling the then chairman, Billy Payne, who I knew from the Atlanta Olympics so well. Good guy, ran the Women's Olympics, hated to be in this position. I know he did. But he got himself into this mess, and they're pummeling him about why this person, this CEO, doesn't get to be a member because it's a woman. And then 4 months later, they had the first 2 women members. So I think the questions were kind of important in 99 and 2000 and onward all the way up to 2012. But the golf writers thought it was hilarious, punching me in the shoulder, laughing at me, being laughed at by my colleagues. Sure, that happened. Being written about is called shrill, which of course, as we know, is such a misogynistic term, by Alan Shipnuck. He made up stuff in a book about me. Lovely, huh? But who cares? Because I was on the story, I asked the questions, I broke the story. And now out of their 5 or 6 women, maybe 10, there's 300 some members of Augusta National Golf Club. Let's give them a boost and say 10 members. It's not a lot, is it? But 10's better than 0. And golf is really in trouble with women. And so that's what they're desperate now to try to get people. And I played golf my whole life and I love it, but it's a demographic disaster moving forward in the next 30, 40 years without women playing golf. So that's why now they're all desperate. So anyway, these stories happen. It can be tough to ask a question. Your heart can be racing. As I said, people may not like you, but you're a journalist and you're not there to be loved. You're not there to make friends. You're there for your readers, and you're there for the people that buy the paper, or in this case, obviously now websites or your TV network. But it can be tough, and there'll be people who won't like you. Or like if it's more of a local TV station, it's probably going to be, you may well be happier news, and they would never ask those questions, and that's okay too. But I would never have survived in that environment, of course. So, but I would never have been able to ask these tough questions, I don't think, at 22 or 23, you know, maybe, because I felt very strong and comfortable, confident coming out of a great school, as you should as well. But it, you know, as you get older, you obviously, yeah, you get more a tougher skin, we'll say. And of course, we can talk about Twitter and social media as well, and what the impact it has there too. But yeah, I think on interviewing, listening is important as asking the questions, and be prepared, but also be ready to, you know, follow up and ask questions and do your homework. And I think that probably goes without saying, right? I think that's implied. Know the subject. You know, I get interviewed a lot by students for papers and things, and I love doing it. And I do try to do every one. If I miss one, I, you know, fell through the cracks. I feel bad about that. The number of times people have said, so, you know, where did you go to college and where did you start your career? I answer, but compare that, you guys, to someone who would say, you know, I know you were, you know, from Toledo, you went to Northwestern, you started the Miami Herald, Washington Post. How was it when you went from the Herald to the Washington Post? Who's done the homework, right? And who hasn't? Again, I'm not going to berate a student, never, ever, ever. Of course I would. But we've just wasted 2 or 3 minutes of that student's time talking about stuff that is readily available all over the place on the internet. My bio on my website, Wikipedia, we shouldn't trust Wikipedia, but we all go there, things. And obviously, I think the Wikipedia page someone else did. I have no idea who it was, but I think someone's gone in and corrected a few things over the years, a public relations person that I know. But you know, it's right. I think it's right. And so bottom line is so many ways you can do that. So do that. One, you'll impress the person you're interviewing, whether you want to or not. Maybe that doesn't matter. But also you won't waste the time asking questions that are readily available in the public domain. And that's something, you know, so if you're interviewing a student athlete, let's say you're interviewing someone on the women's basketball team, you know, Hannah, well, make sure you know what her stats were, and that she had an incredible game against Virginia Tech. And, you know, I mean, just have that. And whether you write it down or have it in your head, you know, you're not going to ask her, how did you play the other day, right? You would never ask that. So think of that in terms of, don't ever ask that kind of question to someone. And if you're doing informational interviews too, like if for jobs or a job interview, but even if an informational interview, just talking to someone about maybe a friend of the family, again, know about that person. Look at their, you know, if it's someone like Betsy or me, and you're talking to someone who maybe runs a TV station or is a news director somewhere or an editor somewhere, again, look at their background, know that. So then you can sprinkle that in, like, you know, I know that, you know, you left Wisconsin and then, you know, you went to a small paper before you made it to the Chicago Tribune. Wow. You have now shown them that you've done your homework. If they're interviewing for a job, they're going to say, I like that kid. I like that student. You know what I mean? That person impressed me. So that's not the reason you're doing this all the time. You're doing it because you want to have knowledge and be ready to do a good interview, but also make sure if it's an informational or job interview that you are prepared. It's the same kind of thinking, frankly, as if you're interviewing someone for a story. And I think
and you cannot prepare. And we've talked about that, you know, so many times here in class. And I will open it up to questions, but I do want you all to know that Christine Brennan really broke the story about the Masters. I mean, it was Martha Burke having protests in front of Augusta National. And those of you who play golf know what a revered place that is. And Martha Burke was picketing, and she said, let's not support the sponsors to make them have women members. And so then the head of Augusta National before Billy Payne said, okay, we won't have sponsors then. I mean, they found every way to kind of get around that. before they finally realized that let's go into the 20th century and actually have women members. And Condoleezza Rice, of course, with Notre Dame ties, she's one of the first, if not the first, correct?
Yeah, she and a woman named Darla Moore were the first
Right.
two that day
Yeah.
that I, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it was, and it turned out Martha Burke, who I never heard of,
Mhm.
until read my column. And she bought USA Today at National Airport and read my column. And that's why she wrote the letter to Hootie Johnson. So then, of course, the boys club that wanted to keep golf all male, which, like, how stupid in terms of growing a game, right? And they also have daughter. I mean, you can't even make up the misogyny or the sexism. I don't even know what it is, you know. Anyway, they then were saying that I was in cahoots, Betsy. I was in cahoots with Martha Burke.
Oh, my.
How on earth can I know who reads my column every day? There's a lot of people reading, you know, USA Today. So I was like, this is insane, boys. You know, like, cut it out. I don't know her. I've never met her. I met her a year later, right? So again, the lengths to which, I hate to say it, you guys aren't like this. I know you're not. And you're not, because you're Title IX males. You were raised very differently than your dads and your grandfathers. As you know, but I mean, I get it. It's incredible to see the change and how quickly our nation has fallen in love with Title IX and the idea of women having opportunities to run for president, to be president, obviously senators, congresswomen, members of Congress, you know, tons of them now, of course, and we'll be at 50% and more, over 50% during your lifetimes, women presidents throughout the 30s and 40s, guaranteed. And yeah, you're going to shut out a sport to women when that's your growth industry. Name a capitalist who doesn't want to grow their business, right? So very interesting stuff for sure. And fascinating part of my career, and I was honored to be able to break that. And that.
Well, you certainly you know, got the word out and let people realize exactly what was going on. But I wanted to open it up to questions now. If anybody has a question, jump in. I'm kind of scrolling. Jack, I see your hand up first. Go ahead, Jack.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. You talked about asking the tough question in an interview. Other than the Augusta National time, was there a time you went into an interview thinking, if I do this interview right, this person's never going to speak to me again?
Well, yes. I mean, this wasn't an interview, but these are questions, you know, asking Tiger Woods tough questions in press conferences, because I've never had a one-on-one interview with him. He doesn't do that. And I wasn't the only one asking tough questions about, well, here's an example. This was when the South Carolina flag, the Confederate flag flying over the State House in South Carolina, that issue was raging. And Serena Williams had gone to meet the governor to talk about it. And Tiger were at the Masters, and the next tournament is, those of you who love golf know, on the men's side in PGA Tour, they go from the Masters to Hilton Head, South Carolina. And so the question was being asked of Tiger. Others were asking various questions about this of him after the Masters. And he's tired. You know, it's tough 4 days. He didn't win. Maybe he did win. I don't remember what happened. But he's sitting there like this, you know, bored out of his mind, you know, and that's fine, of course. And we're asking him, are you going to South Carolina? And he goes, you know, nope. What about the South Carolina flag? I'm going on vacation. I'm not going to South Carolina. Right. Okay. So everyone said, well, he's young, right? I think it was like 22, 23 Tiger was then, you know, he's young. Let's give him a break. Serena Williams is 5 years younger than Tiger Woods. So I didn't ask Tiger ever about Serena, but like, wait a minute, if Tiger's can't do, you know, we're giving him a pass because he's a kid. Well, Serena is, as I said, 5 years younger. And so, like, you know, that doesn't work. So, yeah, so I wrote about that a lot. And yeah, Tiger's agent would call screaming, Mark Steinberg, Steiny. You know, I'd be at Wimbledon and I'm like phone back, you know, with cell phones, like 10 cell phones ago, but, you know, still worked overseas. And I'd see the call and I just hold up, you know, it's like a movie, you're holding out the phone like, yes, Mark, as he's screaming. Yeah, you do it because I'm not beholden to Tiger Woods. I'm beholden, you know, when I say beholden, I'm not even, my responsibility is to ask questions and talk, to try to picture and write about or talk about as Ben Bradley, my boss at the Washington Post said, the best version of the truth, the best you can do, a snapshot of that day. And by the way, this isn't about alternate facts and all the crap you hear from one presidential candidate. There are facts, but as journalists, we do our best every day, and then we do it again the next day. And you can't always get all the information. So sports is the same, and I would make a strong case that Tiger Woods was as big a deal to many people as a politician, and certainly a role model, and he needs to be held accountable. And I probably known as the person who did that more than anyone else. And so, yeah, Tiger would never speak to me. We met once and shook hands, and I wished him well. I mean, very cordial, you know, of course, I'll always say hi to someone and talk to them. He was doing something in DC, an exhibition kind of thing here at Congressional Country Club. And we were friendly, and I wished he was injured at the time, you know, and I wished him well. I said, you know, hope you come back soon. I'm sure you're shocked to hear me say that, but I hope you come back soon. And he smiled, and good luck. See you later. Yeah. So even then, even at a time when, you know, you got someone that, you know, I probably wrote 20 columns that he didn't like, and his agent yelled or screamed every single time. But now I see his agent and his big hugs, and he laughs, you know, like when I say big hugs, I mean, not like, you know, you're a journalist, so you always want to stay apart. But of course, if someone's coming at me and going to give me like a half hug or whatever, nice greeting, that's fine. Clearly, everyone knows that will not change my coverage of his client. And no one will ever assume I'm in the bag for Tiger Woods. Now, it sounds like I'm out to get him. I'm not. I wrote probably 50 columns praising him on the golf course. But those issues, those social issues for Tiger were huge. Another example that I asked the agent and asked Tiger, you may remember the old caddy, oh gosh, what was his name? Who's the guy from New Zealand?
Stevie.
Pardon me?
I think it was Stevie. Or
Yeah,
Stevie. Yeah,
Stevie.
everyone's got an IE on the end, Stevie. And Stevie picked up, cameraman they got mad at a photographer for, you know, shooting pictures in Tiger's backswing, which is, I would not be happy either. Stevie went and got the camera and threw it in a lake. So I did a whole column on where Tiger would be without cameras, which of course we never would have heard of Tiger, right? Because there'd be no cameras. And it was, you know, tongue in cheek. Oh, they hated that. Now it sounds like I'm doing it to provoke them. No, I'm doing it because of events that happen. When they do them, then I will respond. I'm not looking for this. I never came up with any of this on my own. It happened because of things that Tiger or his team did. So there's an example. I'm sure there are many, many. I mean, right now, I'm going to go up to Montreal in a couple of weeks to drop in for a few days at the World Figure Skating Championships. Even though I'm gearing up for Paris, we're going to have another Olympics a year and a half later at Winter Olympics in Italy. If you don't get to Paris, you guys get to the Italian Alps. It's going to be great. And so I'll just keep my hand in the game in figure skating, which I've had a couple best-selling books, and Tanya Nancy was huge, you know, just when I started doing TV work. And, you know, so it's been a big part of my life, this goofy, weird, you know, wonderful, beautiful sport of figure skating. And one of the things I've done the last 5 years is I've had people reach out to me. I've broken a lot of stories on the allegations of sexual abuse and assault in figure skating. And women trust me, and men too, young men who've also been abused. And that's one of the great, I feel horrified that they've gone through it, but the fact that Me Too is such a big deal now, that they feel so comfortable coming forward. And because I've written so much about it, more people come and find me. And a woman and I work together, a woman out in Europe now, a victim of a rape in 2012. Horrible. You can look it up, and 2 of the worst most graphic paragraphs I've ever written in my career. And we put, of course, a warning on top of the story. It's a guy named Nikolai Sorensen, if you want to look up the stories. A couple months ago, broke this story. A year working with this woman. Finally, we never used her name, so I'll of course never say her name, but she finally said, okay, you go ahead and write it. And I looked out for her every step. I called her, you know, I told her it's about to be printed. She didn't want to look on Twitter, X. And I told her, you're going to get the greatest support you've ever gotten. And sure enough, I sent her like 50 or 60 screenshots from Twitter within the first hour of people saying, we're with you. Obviously, they don't know her name. This horrible, horrible thing, Nikolai Sorensen. Well, one of the reasons I'm going to the World Championships, Nikolai Sorensen is going to be competing for Canada. He was an Olympian in 2022 in Beijing. I was there, but I don't remember seeing him. He didn't win a medal. Ice dancer, who would care about an ice dancer in Canada, right? If you're American, you know, USA Today. But because of the fact that he is alleged to have done this horrible thing and is being investigated. Even more important, it's not just her word. There's a big investigation going on with Canadian Safe Sport. I'm going up there. I'm going to go up and, as I said, cover it. But I will go to the mix zone, is where we do the interviews in the Olympic world. And they'll bring him in, and I'm sure someone in the PR department will say, you know, Nikolai's only going to talk about skating. And I and a few others who I know well, we haven't talked about it, but I know them. I will say, with all due respect to what you just said, Nikolai, you're here. And this is, you haven't returned my phone calls, or your agent hasn't returned any emails or phone calls. Did you rape a woman in 2012? I'll ask that. Now they'll barge, that'll be the end of that, right? And they'll barge off. So I might wait a question or two, so my colleagues can ask a couple other questions before it blows up. I'm not there to blow up. I'm there to try to get his answer, right? But I think I know what's going to happen. I think we can all guess, right, what'll happen. But I wouldn't be doing my job. It would be absolute dereliction of duty if I did not ask the question that I've been trying to get him to answer for several months, on behalf of the readers and on behalf of that woman who I'm very honored to have the voice to tell that story, and the guts and the courage she showed. As a wife now, she's got a husband and 2 little kids. And she's horrified that he's out still competing and still around other people. And again, you can look up how violent the allegations were. So, you know, those are things I don't relish that. I'm sure my heart will be beating more than normal, you know, but you bet I'm going to ask that question of him. Another piece of it that I might do, he withdrew from, it's way more than you care about, but since I'm trying to kind of give you a sense of, Jack, of what you were asking, that he withdrew from the nationals, the Canadian nationals, because he didn't want to be a distraction, he and his partner. I stance. And okay, so if you didn't want to, maybe this will be the first question I ask. If you didn't want to be a distraction at the nationals, it so happens the World Championships are in Canada. If they were in, you know, Japan, I wouldn't be going because of the distance, not because of him. But if you were a distraction with the nationals, why are you here at the Worlds? Are you not a distraction here too? So, you know, there's a lot of ways to do it. But yes, I've done it probably a lot, and it's no joy. I don't seek it. I know people think journalists were just causing trouble. Couldn't be further from the truth. If people didn't do stuff, we wouldn't have things to ask. You know, Donald Trump, you know, you may have heard he was president, and, you know, we'd never have a president from 2016 to 2020, 2021, who was more involved with sports. And so anytime he entered the intersection of sports and culture, I was happy as a journalist to meet him there and write a column or be on CNN. Remember the SOB line? You know, when Donald Trump called all the Black players in the NFL basically SOBs. You know, I was in the CNN green room for something else. Don Lemon and I immediately did that. I wrote columns. Again, I would never have written a word about Donald Trump. Certainly would never deal with the politics and never tell you what I think of him politically. You can probably guess, but I would never say that in a public forum or on any social media. A lot of my colleagues do. I don't do anything with politics. But when it becomes sports, when it now is in this realm of sports, you bet. The Megan Rapinoe, Donald Trump battle. Could you imagine Ronald Reagan going after an athlete who was wearing the red, white, and blue representing our nation? George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton. So we were in uncharted territory. So yes, I know the Trump people were mad. Mike Pence's people were mad at me. Yeah, that goes with the territory, and that's fine. I'll take that. I think my questions were valid, and my columns and my comments were completely valid, and will stand the test of time, I hope.
Right. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with what you think readers want to know, need to know, and, you know, exactly where those questions go. You never know, but I think that you have to be honest with yourself and you know, be able to sleep at night that you did ask the right questions. So before we go, as I mentioned, KK Bransford from the women's basketball team is in this class as well, and she's on the line. So I kind of want to ask both of you about Caitlin Clark and what this has meant. And you touched on it at the beginning about, you know, we're talking about, and it seems as if every time Caitlin Clark makes one milestone, somebody says, Well, yeah, but so-and-so scored more. Okay, so she passes Pete Maravich. Well, yeah, but so-and-so scored more. I mean, they're always trying to raise the bar for what she's done. But having said that, what she has done has been remarkable, 3-point line or no 3-point line. So I want to ask you, Christine, just what this one player has meant for women's college basketball. And it kind of started with the tournament last year and just has carried over to this season.
No, it has. Yeah. And I mean, I think there is the reason we say D1 or major college basketball, she has the most points now of any person to ever play the game, is because I think there is a D2 person who has more. And so, I mean, that's a legit point. And it might be D3, someone who has more. And that's why I've always said major college. We've all said that. So yeah, I mean, you know, we let us not underestimate the amount of, you know, sexism that still exists. I mean, like, I'll ask all you guys, do you guys all do a men's and women's bracket in March Madness? Anyone who doesn't do a women's bracket? You know, we're not going to get, you know,
It's okay. You could admit it if you don't. That's all right.
But I'm curious, you know what? I might write a column on this. And again, I'm not looking at any of you at all. No, it's great. But if you're not, why not? Because the complaint, Betsy, used to be, well, we don't know the players, right? How many times, because our family's done women's and men's, because we have nieces and all of us, you know, sisters, everyone who's played basketball and other sports. And so, of course, we've always done a women's bracket and a men's. And by the way, the people that are doing them in offices, they don't know the men's teams either, right? They're just having fun. So this notion, I won't do a women's because I don't know the teams. Well, you can't say that anymore. Because is it Kaylin? Or you said Cece? Is that how she pronounces it? Yeah. I just want to.
Yes, correct. Kaylin.
Okay, there
Yeah,
she
hi,
is.
Kaylin. Hi there.
Okay, I go by KK.
KK. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, as you know, I mean, this is absolutely a watershed moment that reminds me of the '99 Women's World Cup. Your attendance has risen. I mean, you're getting those crowds. Look at, you know, your game against Virginia Tech, obviously the tournament for you guys. Good luck. And then of course NCAAs, the great tradition at Notre Dame with women's hoops. And yet how many people will still use the word basketball at Notre Dame? And you're going, is something wrong with that? Yeah, of course something's wrong with that. If anyone is saying the word basketball meaning men's, you guys have to add the modifier. You got to do it, and you got to tell all your classmates to do it. And this isn't like, oh, you know, the Middle East is blowing up and you're worried about this. Obviously, the Middle East is bigger than the adjective men's. Clearly, you can quote me on that. I'm not, but since we're talking about these issues, right, Betsy, and you asked. So these are the things that are happening with Caitlin Clark. There's not a guy or a woman, but we'll kind of guessing it's more guys who can say now, I don't know about the women's game. So then why wouldn't you do a women's bracket this year, right? And as we all are hearing now, people know the women's game more than the men's. Of course, the men is one and done. That's devastating to fan interest, knowledge, acquaintance with the team, with your school and players, because so many of them just leave. Obviously, none of them will ever approach Caitlin Clark. The next person to break Caitlin Clark's record, if anyone does, will be a woman, because, you know, maybe Juju Watkins, but maybe not. But whoever it will be, if anyone does, and she's going to add on another 100 or so points anyway, Caitlin is, with the Big Ten tournament. And then, of course, the NCAAs, they should have won at least 2 games. You know, we'll see what happens. Sweet 16, Elite 8 for Iowa. And moving on, hopefully they make the Final Four, but who knows? But you're not going to have a great man is going to leave to go to the NBA, right? So that record will forever be with women now. And, you know, this bothers some men, right? I don't know why, because most of these guys know a woman. They probably have a mother. It's a joke. They probably have sisters. They may have a wife. They may have daughters, right? And when they have daughters, then it changes for sure. It definitely changes then. But Caitlin Clark is all of this. So I think we'll start with this group and we'll move out from here. Use the word men's basketball if you're talking about men's basketball, and tell all your buddies and pals, and you know, older sports writers will not do that. TV people won't do it. Oh my God, the lady thing. It is devastating that Tennessee still uses lady balls, because it allows the very lazy sportscasters out there to then say lady, I don't know what they'd say, lady fighting out. You can't do that. But every now and then they'll say lady Terps here in in DC, Maryland. But Brenda Fries would literally punch them in the nose. At Northwestern, lady, I mean, no one would have ever say lady Wildcats, right? Except for those people who hear Tennessee or what is it? I guess Penn State does it, which I cannot believe. And it's self-imposed sexism, right? So the difference is the modifier there, lady, unless you're calling the team the gentleman, the gentleman Vols, which of course is ridiculous. And I understand why it happened years ago, but you don't have to do it now. You don't have to, you don't have to add the word lady. I'm not a lady sports writer and you guys aren't lady students, right? You're students. And so hopefully we'll get Tennessee and the others to stop that soon. I'm not going to hold my breath. Unfortunately, it's just so awful that they do that. Again, not in the scheme of the world, not the biggest deal. Caitlin Clark brings us to every single one of these conversations. The reason that Angel Reese, because of course there was a lot last year, as you know, that Angel Reese doesn't get this attention, one is she doesn't have the record. She's also not shooting threes. I think one of the huge things about Caitlin Clark is the visual. We can see her all the way up the court, bringing the ball up by herself, shooting those threes, while Angel Reese is one of those people that's more in the paint, right? Throwing elbows. Just the visual of someone who doesn't know basketball or does. You just get eyes on Caitlin Clark. You see more of Caitlin Clark. She is so much more of her own individual on a team sport. Then the way she handles it, the grace, the autographs, everything about her is extraordinary. She is the perfect role model for the perfect time. I wrote a long piece you guys can find easily. Just Google Caitlin Clark and my name. It's the only thing I've written about her. And a couple of weeks ago, it's dated now. And I said, of course, she'll probably go to the WNBA, but consider staying for a 5th year. And I also said they need to put her on the Olympic team because the rising tide, lifts all boats. And the WNBA better not blow this. She's not Maya Moore, who is great. And of course, her hero. She's not Rebecca Lobo. She's not anyone, you name it. Caitlin Clark is the greatest thing to ever happen to women's basketball. Is she the greatest women's basketball player ever? I have no idea. I'm not going to even go there. It doesn't matter. The eyeballs, the numbers. Do you guys realize that on Fox, the women's basketball is averaging 960,000 viewers, something like that. And men's is like 930 or 940. More people watching women's basketball this year than men's. I'd never in a million years would have thought I would have said that sentence. That's Caitlin Clark. And what it does, though, it then trickle down, and that's not even necessarily the right word, because I don't think Iowa was the best team in the country. But South Carolina, people know more about South Carolina. Of course they should. Dawn Staley, amazing teams, the best team in the country, undefeated. They know more about Notre Dame. They know more about Ohio State. It brings it all together. And I'm sure you're well aware, Indiana Fever, I think season tickets have sold out. I checked for the Washington Mystics game here. The game before the Indiana game is like StubHub, $75. The Indiana at Washington Mystics game, $400. This is real. And it is absolutely stunning. You guys are witnessing something, one of your peers doing something that we will be remembering forever. Books will be written, because Title IX is about much more than sports. It's about a mindset. It's about our culture and changing the way, every woman that I said will be running the country and running Fortune 500 corporations and universities, all your age group, when you're in your 50s and 40s, 50s, 60s, every single one of those women will have played sports because of Title IX. They might not be Olympic gold medalists and they might not be college athletes, but they would have played at age 5, 6, 7, 8 and learned those life lessons about winning and losing at a young age and teamwork and sportsmanship that for generations we were only allowing boys and men to learn. 50% of our country couldn't learn those life lessons. What on earth were we thinking? And so we have just, as I said, Title IX has exploded. And of course, we've got a lot of issues. And for paying athletes, watch out for football and men's basketball and women's basketball dominating that. And real concern about everything becoming club sports. Lots and lots of issues here moving forward with the financial aspects. And if athletes are employees and all those things that are issues we will be discussing, you will be discussing for a long time in your career. But Caitlin Clark certainly stands alone as, I think, the seminal moment right up there with the 99 Women's World Cup and Venus and Serena as just taking us to a whole new level where the guy that wouldn't even turn on sports, that guy, right? I don't like it. It's not the same. It's slower. They're not as tall. They're not dunking. Would now just kill for a ticket to a Caitlin Clark game. And that is change in America for sure.
Yeah, that's very true. And you talk about just what college sports looks like right now. I mean, we can go another hour for transfer portal and NIL and all that. And now Dartmouth basketball wants to unionize. And so we went through that
Men's.
with,
Let's make sure it's men's. Can you guys imagine a union that doesn't have women in it?
yeah.
Where's that? Where the Dartmouth women? And of course, this is fast. I mean, you guys should all write about this and talk to, you can easily make it a Notre Dame thing. Okay, who's paying the union dues? Because we know the NIL for Dartmouth men's basketball. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's just fascinating to me. The NIL for Dartmouth men's basketball is not much, right? I mean, it's Dartmouth. They won that last night against Harvard, and I'm all for them. Do whatever you want. It's a free country. And then, of course, it's not the UAW, right? UAW, you work, 30, 40 years. This is your 3 years, 4 years and done, or you even transfer. Like, how's that going to work with union membership? There's a lot of thinking yet to come. And this idea that it's all great, maybe, but if it all of a sudden turns every other sport into a club sport, all of our Olympic sports, which one will affect our Olympic the Olympics moving forward to LA 2028. By the way, look on their website, jobs, LA 2028. That would be a fun thing for all of you guys. Just check their website. Jobs that come open every day. To work at an Olympics would be fantastic. It's certainly an option that's going to be sitting there for your age group. Because of course, after Paris, we go to Winter Olympics and then summer in LA in 2028. It's a huge opportunity for jobs and being around sports. So that's just another little one. And I know we've gone on and on. My website is ChristineBrennan.com, just my name, and I get emails there. Sometimes it's hard to answer them right away, but if I can help you individually, be there for you. And again, if you're a woman or if you're a man, which I think probably covers most everyone here, the Association for Women in Sports Media. We are not exclusive. Guys join. We had about 4 or 5 guys at the Northwestern one last week. Jobs, internships, just all kinds of mentoring. AWSM, join or at least check our website, follow us on Twitter. I'm the chair of the board and back again. And it's a wonderful organization that can help you look for internships, jobs, et cetera. So a few thoughts for you, and I wish you the best. And again, happy to stick around, but I know you probably have to do other things than listen to me.
Well, it is so interesting, I think, to get others' perspectives. And when you have someone like you who is in the middle of it, and I think that it's just so important for the students to be able to hear the day-to-day and what you go through, because yes, everybody thinks it's so glamorous, and it's work, it's homework, it's studying, it's preparing for that 2 hours of the basketball game or whatever you're doing, or a 3-minute interview on CNN. There's so much preparation that goes into it, but it has to be done just to make sure that it comes across knowledgeable and you get your point across. And it is so important. And you mentioned Awesome. And I know that you have a scholarship connected with Awesome. And the class will be making a donation to your scholarship for your time today. And we certainly appreciate your time and your wisdom. And yes, everybody who has been a guest here, they always are generous with their time, not just through this hour, but to answer emails, to answer questions. And please, for the whole students, please don't hesitate, because these folks are here because they want you to succeed. And so don't hesitate to follow up with them if you have any other questions, because it's just so important to make sure that you get that knowledge. So Christine, always a pleasure. Been too long since we've seen each other face to face. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your wisdom. And again, for this class, I hope that you've gotten some insight and information about interviewing. We have break next week. So please, everybody, please be safe during spring break. They're going to kick you out of Miami Beach, so you can't go there. But
good luck, you guys, and good luck, KK. I'll be watching. And again, please get in touch. It's the greatest career ever. I didn't mean to cut you off, Betsy. I think I cut you off like 5 times. So I owe you big time. But truly, it is the adventure of a lifetime. There's nothing better than covering sports and traveling the world doing it. So I'm here to help you. And of course, you've got the best professor and teacher you could possibly have. Just a wonderful, wonderful role model, pioneer, great journalist. So thank you so much. I'll sign off. Good luck to you guys.